by Awesemo Daily Fantasy Sports. I'm Dave Lockren. With me, Adam Scher in his new digs, as you can see, different location. And Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, the number one ranked daily fantasy player in the universe. What's cracking, boys?
What's up? Looking forward to talking some baseball here.
All right. Yeah, I shouldn't have even asked because with Adam, I'll just get a hey. And,
Yeah.
all right. Well,
see, it's the other person's job to answer you on that one.
What's up?
It's the other person's job to answer you on that.
Yeah, I guess so. You don't have that liability anymore. How's the new apartment?
I like it. Right in the middle of a ton of bars and restaurants and stuff. So I'm enjoying it so far.
Good. Did you move in today? Was this today?
No, I got the keys on the 1st. I got my couch delivered yesterday. So my couch and my mattress delivered yesterday. So last night was the first night I actually stayed here.
Okay, so the first night you slept there was yesterday. Yeah, it's got to be odd, though. New place is always strange, especially when you're by yourself.
Yeah, no question.
All right, let's get into that. 12-game slate here. We've got a bunch of high totals. We had the same yesterday too, Alex. Except this game, you got a few less games on this slate, but still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alex, 9 teams with a run total of 5 or higher today.
Yeah, man. We gotta give yesterday's slate a shout out here because, man, what a crazy slate. Miami.
I got hammered.
One of the weakest teams on the slate ended up getting the most runs, and that just shows you how crazy fantasy MLB is, right?
No question, man. I went on the strategy show and I afterwards, and I saw a comment of someone saying, you're nothing but a shill because you told me that Anderson could be a good play and not to target Miami. Like, look, man, any of us talk about, we're interested in them ourselves. Sustainability isn't great when you just throw nonsense out there that you have no interest in and hope that people buy into it. It doesn't work like that. Nobody intentionally tried to not get you off of Miami. Like, yes, that was the idea here, Adam, to get everyone off of the Marlins so we could roster them because we knew they were going to drop 16 runs.
Yeah, exactly. Like I made a little bit of money on yesterday's slate, and it actually kind of makes me think that I probably need to fix some stuff in my process because that doesn't seem like a slate that you should have made money on.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it then. I'll start with you, Adam, now that you're back. Pittsburgh and Atlanta. We've got a pretty high total here for the Atlanta Braves going up against a pretty Well, you know what? Joe Musgrove this season he's been way worse than we've seen. And lefties have really done the bulk of the damage. Righties not as bad, but a 5.1 total for the Braves today, 4.5 for the Pittsburgh Pirates against Kevin Gausman. This one's in Pittsburgh. And earlier it looked like we may have had some weather concerns here. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, so still, I haven't really tracked the weather. I kind of start doing that after this show, leading up to lock. But I think that Musgrove on DraftKings in particular is appealing just because he's $5,600 and he's more talented than that price tag. It's not a good matchup for him. Atlanta obviously doesn't strike out a lot. They have a lot of good hitters, but it's a pretty decent park, and he's a good enough pitcher where I think that price tag works as an SP2. Obviously don't have interest on FanDuel where there's one pitcher, and on Yahoo he's $35. I think that he's okay there, but I think that there's some other options that stand out a little bit more. So DraftKings specifically, I think he's fine. And the same goes for Gausman. I think that it's not the best matchup against the Pirates. They don't strike out a ton, but Gausman does have about a 28% strikeout percentage against left-handed hitters this season, and he's only 6,700 on DraftKings specifically. So mostly interested in the pitchers there.
Yeah, and it's not a game where you're excited about them, but you know what? They're cheap. Alex, what about you? Gausman and Joe Musgrove.
Yeah, I have to agree. You can give them some shots on DraftKings where you get 2 pitchers, but they don't have a lot of value as pitchers on one-pitcher sites.
And on, I believe Musgrove on, I know maybe it's John Means that's super expensive, relatively speaking, on Yahoo. Yeah,
Musgrove's more expensive. He's 35.
What's that?
Musgrove's 35 on Yahoo, so he's more expensive relatively.
Right. I was thinking of Means. Means is 37 on Yahoo. So I had the wrong guy. But yeah, Musgrove definitely more. I mean, he's the cheapest pitcher on DraftKings, so it definitely makes sense. What about hitters, Alex? A pretty high total here for the Atlanta Braves. They dropped 12 yesterday in Pittsburgh, and maybe they look to follow that up here against Musgrove. But I mean, it is. Look, he has been way worse against lefties, and that's kind of always been the case with him. This season, I think that it's a little bit more extreme than outside of 2019. But he has struggled, and he will still have some ownership here. Are you on Atlanta Bats?
I think I'll end up having some. One guy that really stands out as a great play is Ronald Acuna. He has great power and steals a lot of bases, and that's a recipe for a lot of fantasy success, especially as a leadoff hitter. Because I mean, whether he gets on base or he hits for power, like you're in a pretty good spot. So I think that's awesome. Um, on DraftKings, I'm seeing there is Dansby Swanson priced up at 5K, which, in my opinion, is too high of a price. But that actually kind of worked out in yesterday's slate, going for that pay up to be contrarian and having that guy in the stack no one else had. So I don't hate it, but I think that the best way to stack it up would be 1, 3, 4, 5 probably, and Dansby Swanson as contrarian option.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, getting to Atlanta in my initial crunches, especially on DraftKings, because I expect Musgrove to have more ownership. So you get that leverage angle in addition to the fact that Atlanta is just a good offense, and you do have some reasonable pricing. Acuna, in particular, like Alex said, I think stands out as a clear play. I think that he'll have plenty of ownership, but he's just underpriced relative to some other options on this slate for how good he is. So yeah, I mean, I think that Atlanta in this park and against a decent pitcher in Musgrove, I think that where you should have the most interest in full Atlanta stacks is on sites where Musgrove is going to be more popular.
All right. Sounds good to me. Do we have any interest in Pittsburgh bats against Gossman?
I don't.
All right. Do you, Alex?
No.
All right. Then we'll stick with you here, Adam. Toronto and the New York Yankees. James Paxton, Trent Thornton. Paxton's phenomenal. Actually, the highest K rate, highest swinging strike rate on this slate. It's higher than Sales, but he came back from an extended injury. He was out almost a month. He had 7 Ks, no runs, no hits in 4 innings, but only threw 66 pitches. It's hard to say what type of limitations he'll see today. And I think a common theme will be, especially on DraftKings, well, yeah, he's good, but Chris Sale is egregiously underpriced. So I think Paxton, just given what restrictions could be on him at 11-3 is tough to get to. And then Thornton on the other side has been beat up pretty good by lefties this year. Another pitcher who's been very good against same-handed bats. We'll get to that in a minute, but let's start with Paxton.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as far as Paxton goes, it's just really difficult for me to pay for him on this slate because even if it's not Sale, for some reason you're not that high on Sale. There's just so many other pitchers that we know aren't going to be on any sort of restriction. It's really hard for me to think that with the injury history that James Paxton has, the Yankees are going to say, okay, you threw 66 pitches last time, go throw a 105. It's really hard for me to see that happening here. He's good enough that you could certainly still see a good game out of him. I mean, he scored, I think, like 21 DraftKings points in 66 pitches his last start. Yeah. He's that good, and it's not a bad matchup against Toronto. So
that was without getting the win.
Yeah, it was in 4 innings. So, he's certainly the kind of pitcher that can do that. But when you're talking about, ranges of outcomes and probabilities, I'd rather not paint myself into a corner where I'm paying up for a pitcher that I need to basically throw a perfect game while he's out there, especially when there are so many other options on this slate. So it's tough for me to get to Paxton.
What about you, Alex? Is this a spot where you get to any pitching?
I think that Paxton is in play on FanDuel and Yahoo in particular. I'm kind of scared off by that 11.3 price tag on DraftKings, which seems egregious given the factors that you guys were mentioning where you can't expect him to be full go here after he pitched 66 pitches in his last start. But we have seen ample times recently that those ace pitchers like Sale, it doesn't matter how good the spot it is, there's always the potential to fail. And I have Sale projected for like 25 points on DraftKings and pretty high point totals, but half the time he's going to score under his projection. And when he does, I mean, and you have Paxton, maybe you're in a pretty good spot. So I think that as a contrarian play, he's got the talent. And I think that I don't usually like to go contrarian at pitchers, but that is an option.
And he also is, 1,500 less than Sale on FanDuel, and $7 less on Yahoo. So I think on DraftKings it is a little bit more difficult. I mean, I get it. We've seen chalk and ace pitchers fail so often this year, but it's even easier if you're going to do it on a site where Paxton's significantly discounted from Chris Sale as well. What about hitters here, Alex, with the New York Yankees up against Trent Thornton?
For some reason, all three sites have just decided Kendrys Morales is like of no fantasy value, and he's just like under 3K on DraftKings, which is rare for players, especially on a team as good as the Yankees. And he's batting in the middle of the order, so I think that's a really good spot. He's got just about average power, doesn't steal a lot of bases, so not a ton of upside, but the team matchup and the spot in the order is just too good to ignore at that price point.
Alex, dude, yesterday it was so easy, right? It was just one of us. A quick, hey, what do you think, Alex? We're back to this, back to the grind again, where I can't get names right. It is really troublesome. Adam, what are your thoughts on the Yankee bats?
I actually have some interest in Thornton more so than the Yankees, I think.
Okay,
7 right-handed hitters in this lineup, and I'm not saying I'm going to get a ton of Thornton just because of how roster construction goes, but 7 right-handed hitters in the lineup for the Yankees, and for the most part, those hitters are also expensive, which makes it hard to get to them. Against righties this year, 25.2% strikeout percentage for Thornton, but just a 285 expected WOBA allowed, 133 expected ISO. He's been lit up by lefties, but he's really, really held his own against righties. Has a 17% swinging strike percentage on his slider and his cutter, 14.4% overall. I think that with the Yankees having around a 5 implied run total and just being the Yankees, you probably get some ownership there. And I don't like the spot for them all that much because I think that Thornton is good, in this side of the platoon split.
All right. Well, so do you have any interest in Yankee hitters here?
Outside of the obligatory, they have power. Gary Sanchez is a really good hitter. Luke Voigt has power. If Thornton is bad today, the Yankees can take advantage. That's obvious. But
For sure.
I don't think that outside of the obvious, they're the Yankees. I don't have any extra interest in them.
I don't think it's a crazy take either. I mean, you have a lot of righties here, and Thornton does look. The guy is more than capable of missing bats, which is really the biggest thing. And as far as home runs go, he's been beat up far worse from by opposite-handed hitters. I think having no Aaron Hicks in the lineup definitely helps him. It's another bat that isn't from the left side, so I don't think it's crazy. And Kendrys Morales, while he is a decent value play, he's also not very good. So if he and Gardner are your only left-handed hitters, I guess you could be a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, to put it into context, I crunched 550 DraftKings lineups before our show started, and the Yankees, I had more 5-man stacks of 8 other teams.
Okay. Let's stick with you here. We'll go over to Cleveland and Minnesota. Martin Perez and Tyler Clippert is starting this one off. Bullpen game. Certainly not going to see him go very deep, but Carlos Carrasco was scheduled to start and then ended up being diagnosed with a blood condition and put on the IL. So interesting turn of events there, Adam. And Carrasco would have been very chalky. Not going to be the case anymore at a pretty discounted price point. But it's funny because Carrasco, you mentioned the barreled balls per plate appearance last time. It's been brutal. A ton of hard contact, a lot of power allowed. Again, a Twins team that doesn't strike out. I was kind of hoping he was on this slate so I could, go elsewhere at a similar price, but that won't be the case. We've got Perez and Tyler Clippert here.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough game, I think, because I was with you. I like the idea of taking one-offs against Carrasco because of the power that he allows, especially to lefties. When you get a bullpen game, the tendency is always to be like, oh, these guys suck. But when you're getting these guys throwing, for 1 or 2 innings at a time, it's normally not really an advantageous spot for opposing teams, especially when they're priced up as much as Minnesota is. So I'm not getting to a lot of the Twins. It's just really tough to stack a team that has 3 out of their top 4 hitters on DraftKings at least $5,500, and then the rest of the lineup isn't really that cheap either. There's pitching to pay for on this slate. There's enough offenses with high implied run totals that I'm not expecting to get to a whole lot of Minnesota. And then on the other side, like, Cleveland doesn't strike out a ton. Perez still doesn't strike out a ton of hitters, but he has gotten better at limiting power to opposing hitters. And Cleveland doesn't have a ton of right-handed power in this lineup. If you wanted to get to a Lindor or a Luplo or Ramirez at pretty cheap price points, then I think that's fine. But none of them are really priorities for me.
This game, to me, actually is pretty unappealing as a whole.
I agree.
Alex, what about you?
You'd think that with Carrasco out, a good pitcher like that, there would be a price discount for these Minnesota bats, but we're really not seeing it. So I don't see any reason to go there as far as optimizing by projection. However, the ownership is super, super low. On DraftKings, only projected for 1.7% ownership by our projections and 4% on FanDuel and Yahoo, where they have that team total of 5.5 and they're on the road. So I think they have a lot of potential today. And there are a couple of good values that I like. One that is egregiously priced is Nelson Cruz batting third at 14 on Yahoo. He's in the top 10% of batters today, I think. And when you have him with just a below average salary, that's very appealing. On FanDuel, he's also well priced. And I think that you can make a pretty nice stack, especially on FanDuel and Yahoo, just with guys at the top of the order. One exception being Jorge Polanco, who somehow is like super high priced on every single site. On DraftKings, I like them as a pay up to be contrarian spot because usually there's a ton of variance with batters, and when you get a team with a high team total with low ownership, that really compensates a lot for that lack of projection you get with your overall lineup.
All right, fair enough. We'll stick with you too here, Alex. Tampa Bay and Detroit. Charlie Morton has been amazing this year. He's very good. His strikeout stuff's excellent. He's pitching deep into games, or at least six innings deep on almost every start. But you're going to have to pay a hefty price point for him here. It's a good matchup, of course, but when you're $1,000 more expensive than Chris Sale on DraftKings, that kind of raises some red flags. Maybe you disagree, but you have him and then Spencer Turnbull on the other side. Turnbull hasn't been bad. He's basically a K per inning guy who's done a good job of preventing runs as well. But my guess is Tampa will still have a little bit of ownership today as well. We'll start with pitching here and work our way over to hitters.
Yeah, Lafayette, I gotta say my bad yesterday for bringing up Miguel Cabrera versus Snell because we were talking about how he's got no power and then he goes and pops a grand slam. So
of course. That was that kind of day, though. Like anything that could have gone south or different from what should happen, all of it happened yesterday.
That's right. So we shouldn't feel too bad. We're probably just saying the same stuff everybody else is. Unfortunately, we didn't have that time machine information on Miguel, but
nope.
I think that Morton is in an amazing spot. He's striking out 30% of batters on the year. He doesn't go super deep in games, but the Tigers are about as good a matchup as you can get. 3.9.
And he's been consistent. He's been at least consistent as far as pitching deep, or not deep, but getting like to the sixth inning in most games. At least, not terrible.
Yeah, for sure. The main thing though is his price tag is just super, super high. Like on DraftKings, 11.6. That's pretty much as high as you see pitchers go. So pretty much the roster guy that all the factors need to be in their favor, and he's on the road, which is a negative factor. So that means to me that he's probably not a top play on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, he's a little bit more manageably priced. On Yahoo, he's also kind of top dollar. So this is another guy I'm going to lump in that pay up to be contrarian bucket.
Yeah, well, actually, let's get your take, Adam, because if you are, I paid up here to be contrarian on Morton last time when Carrasco was on the mound. He was supercharged. I went with Morton in most spots. And it ended up being pretty fine, 25 DK points. But it's a little bit different here when you're talking about a guy in Sale who anything can happen, but he is less volatile and way better than a guy like Carrasco. So it's a bit of a different situation. And Morton is really expensive. So what are your thoughts here? I guess it's site specific, maybe.
Yeah, it is site specific. I agree with what Alex said. it's really tough to justify, even when you're talking about being contrarian and getting to a lot of Morton over Sale when he costs $1,000 more, because you're sacrificing bats while also sacrificing pitching. That's not normally a spot that I really like to go to. One other negative to point out here, outside of the fact that he's not in Tropicana, is he's good against right-handed hitters, and the Tigers, right-handed hitters do strike out a lot, but he strikes out a much higher percentage of lefties than righties. 34% of lefties this year to 27% of righties. Last year, it was 36% of lefties to 22% of righties. That's something that's been going on for a couple of years. So, not saying this isn't a good strikeout matchup, but it's not like an optimal strikeout matchup for Morton. Like it would be if you had these same strikeout rates and a bunch of lefties instead. So that's one more thing, kind of not completely perfect for him if you're looking to pay up.
Yeah, that's a reasonable point. Do you like any hitters here?
I like the Tampa Bay side. Austin Meadows is really, really expensive, but he's also been good this year. I have him projected as the third highest hitter on the slate in raw points. And Turnbull's been decent against lefties, very, very good against righties. But the one thing that really stands out is he's only struck out 15% of lefties. You have Tampa Bay getting actually a pretty big ballpark boost here going from Tampa Bay to Detroit. So Brandon Lau, Austin Meadows, G-Man Choi all stand out as pretty reasonable power options. Outside of Meadows, the entire team's very affordably priced as well. So I think that Tampa Bay is a pretty appealing 5-man stack.
Okay. Hitters, Alex, and then we'll move on.
I think Tampa Bay is in a great spot. Detroit is one of my it's a situation where you're paying down, but you're getting a little bit higher ownership than you like is on Detroit, or with Detroit on Yahoo and on DraftKings. They're very good values, so they're going to pop up with lineups to have, for example, like Paxton, Sale, or something like that. You need to get a cheap stack like Detroit to fit that in. And that's not a roster construction I really recommend because you're paying so much for pitching, and I think Detroit's going to be a little bit too high owned.
Okay. Then let's talk about the Mets and the San Francisco Giants. We're almost halfway through this slate here. Adam, Vargas and Tyler Beede. It's funny because Vargas has been like actually decent this year. Comes into LA, throws 7 one-run innings with 6 Ks. God, the dude's allowed 1 run in 5 of his last 6 starts. And before it was like, oh yeah, he goes 4 or 5 innings tops. Now he's gone 7 innings, and it's ridiculous. But I think, look, you're also talking about a couple of warning signs, at least in my opinion. Number one, a guy throws an 85-mile-per-hour fastball. But second of all, his changeup, which is his best pitch, has always been, the whiff rate's down almost 7% this year on it. So even the pitch that got a lot of missed bats is missing a lot less bats this year. And his ex-WOBA, ex-ISO, particularly against righties, are a lot higher than his actual numbers. So I'd love to see where you stand on the pitching and hitting matchup here between Vargas and Beede.
No, I mean, I'm with you on Vargas. I think it would be an interesting conversation if he were, 6,500 or 6K or something like that.
Oh, I'd consider him, but not at this price.
Right. I mean, it's not like it's a bad matchup against the Giants. They're not a good offense, but I don't buy into Vargas being, having the success that he has. The strikeouts still haven't been there. The swings and misses aren't there. The expected stats are worse than the actual stats. There's nothing that I see that makes me think Jason Vargas is just like magically going to keep getting outs. And so I'm not going to pay a mid-range price tag for him. I'd rather look to, maybe like an Evan Longoria or a Tyler Austin. Longoria in particular, I think it's kind of interesting if you go back and look at his numbers since last season. Like he's been bad overall, and he's just been absolutely atrocious in San Francisco, but he's still been an above average hitter if you take him out of San Francisco, which isn't really that surprising. More of a, neutral park here. And so I think he's kind of an interesting play along with Tyler Austin.
By the way, pretty amazing that Kent Tomato was just pulled to 70 pitches. 70 pitches. I mean,
is he hurt?
That's what I'm wondering, but I don't know. Urias came in. I don't know. Whatever. Alex, what are your thoughts here? San Francisco, New York Mets.
I think there's some values that are standing out for sure. The team totals aren't particularly inspiring. 4.8 for the Mets, 4.2 for San Francisco. And So I suppose Vargas should merit some consideration, but his strikeout numbers just aren't very good. 18% of the year. Also, I project the Giants to strike out about 5% less than average. So I think with the batters, there are some that are great values. But again, with this game, I'm seeing that the ownership is a little bit higher than I would like, with 4% on DraftKings and close to 8% for the Mets on FanDuel and Yahoo, where their chance of being the top stack of the night is only about average. They have about 1.5 to 2 times the ownership of your average team.
Okay. Yeah. God, that's so. There's a few guys that stand out. I noticed when writing the deep dive today, a few guys that just have like ridiculous price tags. One of them on DraftKings, one of them on FanDuel. Alex Robinson Cano batting third at $3,200 on DraftKings. I mean, he's literally priced alongside the likes of guys who haven't been in the major leagues this year and probably won't be until September, if that. Like, that's how far down this guy is priced on DraftKings at 3,200. Obviously, Cano is going to get some ownership here, but it is a pretty egregious salary given that he's not a terrible hitter. He's batting third, and Tyler Beede isn't very good.
Yeah, it's always hilarious to me scrolling through DraftKings' list of players, because like the guy I love is Zach Cozart, who's always at like 2.5K, and it's like you're scrolling
always.
through like pages of people who haven't gotten an at bat in the major leagues this season to select him. But Cano at 3,200, not a great batter at this stage in his career. I've only have him projected for about 15% ISO, so that's about 15% less. The average is 17.3, and he's at 15.6, so that's not very good. Doesn't steal bases, so not a lot of fancy value except for the price, but that's enough to get me interested, because that will just allow you to get the stacks you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And second base really isn't that great outside of the top. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I think Cano really stands out at that price too. His expected stats are better than his actual too. He's got a 214 expected ISO against righties this year, 177 actual, 371 expected WOBA. So I think it's just too cheap of a price tag. Certainly a spot where you aren't losing much if you pay down and save some money, and then reallocate that money to another spot in your lineup. But also looking to Michael Conforto, who is a legitimately good hitter, 4,700 on DraftKings. Has left-handed power. Beaty's really been bad against lefties so far. His expected stats are much better than his actual stats allowed, but still, Conforto has the platoon advantage and a lot of power, so I think he's a pretty good play.
What about Tyler Austin on the other side, batting third?
Yeah, I like Austin and Longoria.
Oh yeah, me too. I like Longoria quite a bit. Austin on FanDuel is $2,500, so significant discount there. And Longoria isn't like ridiculously cheap, but he's not expensive either. And he's got, I think, a 228 career ISO against lefties, which is pretty nice. All right, let's talk about Milwaukee and Miami. Adam, we've got on the mound Sandy Alcantara and Jimmy Nelson making his 2019 debut. Look, he was he made like 5 appearances for the San Antonio Missions, and he struck out 29 batters in 24 innings. He walked guys at a relatively high clip, but seemed to be all right. He's not a guy that's ever had a particularly high strikeout rate, although in 2017 against righties, he was up around 24.5%. And we had him getting, or projected to get, quite a bit of ownership right now. Now that we have updated ownership projections, you've got him at 25% here on DraftKings at $8,200. Pretty significant. What are your thoughts against this Miami team that, yes, they scored 16 runs? I get it. This happens. It's baseball. But they're also have a league worst mark in WOBA, ISO, WRC plus, almost everything against righties this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting to be around the field on Nelson. I think that there are several things working in his favor and a couple of things to be concerned about as well. He was really, really, really good in 2017. 27.3% strikeout percentage, like you said. 6.6% walk percentage is like 2 points lower than his career walk percentage.
Yep.
So that was a good improvement there as well. He was, legitimately good. Had an elbow injury, missed all of last year. The strikeouts have been there at AAA. The thing that concerns me is the almost 12% walk percentage, because for AAA hitters, a lot of what keeps them out of the majors is that they just don't have the plate discipline that you need to have to be a major league hitter. And so when you're walking those guys, it's kind of alarming, because normally they're just not that good at drawing walks. So I'm concerned about where his command is at, where his control is at right now. But at the same time, the Marlins are a minor league team full of right-handed hitters. I think that Nelson is pretty. He's affordable. He's in a good spot. I think there are question marks, but I'm still going to probably get him in 25-30% of my lineups.
Okay, what about you, Alex?
Yeah, I have to agree with all the stuff you're saying. Like 29% strikeout rate in the minors this league or this year. He has 5 minor appearances, so I'm not that worried about injury. But I'm probably not going to have him because I'm making 150 Miami stacks tonight.
I love it. He also threw 97 pitches last time out, so that's encouraging. Alex, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I was just saying that so that we can get a little soundbite.
In case anyone bitches at us.
Yeah, just in case someone's like, you didn't recommend Miami and they got 36 runs tonight. But I think Nelson, I'm probably gonna have him just because when you have a pitcher at that mid range, that allows you to afford a lot of good bats, and that's advantageous for GPPs. However, Miami on Yahoo always is priced as a bargain bin team, and actually they don't have any ownership either, so you could potentially use some of those guys on DraftKings. They're also priced well, but not a great GPP strategy. Milwaukee, I like a lot more. I like them particularly on DraftKings. They're not great values, but they make a nice contrarian stack. On FanDuel and Yahoo, they're more popular, particularly Ben Gamel, pretty close to the minimum on FanDuel and Yahoo leading off, projected for an average of 20% ownership. I think that if you want to get the stack and be contrarian, maybe you leave off Gamel, you leave off Shaw, who's also the min price on all 3 sites, and you go for some of the more expensive guys, and you have a lot of leverage over those other stacks because they have guys that aren't particularly good fantasy players, and you're going to have a differentiated stack from them.
Okay. And we got our new daily Miami touting quota out of the way. So
I have one more thing to add on Nelson, too, for anyone who's on the fence.
What's that?
I have one more thing that I just noticed on Nelson, too, for anyone who's on the fence about rostering him. His batted ball profile at AAA this year is pretty scary. For his career in the majors, he has a 20.5% line drive percentage. At AAA this year, it's 24%. He has a 49.7% career ground ball percentage. At AAA, it's 39.7%, so it's down 10%, or 10 percentage points. And then his fly ball percentage is 36.2% at AAA this year compared to 30% in his career. So again, if you're someone that's making like 3 lineups or 1 lineup or whatever, and you're on the fence about what to do with Nelson, that is another red flag to me that maybe he's not completely ready to be as good as he was in 2017.
Fair enough. What are your thoughts on hitters?
I'm with Alex as far as Milwaukee goes. Alcantara is fine. Like he's not bad against either side as far as limiting production, but he does strike out a lower percentage of left-handed hitters, and you just have a ton of left-handed power in the Milwaukee lineup. Travis Shaw, Josh and I talked about it this morning. I couldn't care less what Travis Shaw's done in his limited sample this year. He just came back from the injured list with a wrist injury. At worst, you're getting a cheap hitter who's not very good because he's hurt. At best, you're getting a super underpriced Travis Shaw. But, Christian Yelich is expensive enough where he probably becomes contrarian. Same goes for Moustakas and Grandal. So it's a spot where I don't expect the stack as a whole to have a ton of ownership, like Alex said. And I think that it's a favorable matchup for them.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Shaw is the same price as Dal Lugo on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's even more extreme. He's $2,200, and I think on Yahoo he's minimum salary. So yeah,
$7, I think.
What's that?
I think he's 7.
Yeah, he's isn't that the minimum?
Yeah, I was agreeing with you.
So yeah, I mean he's ridiculously cheap. Is he do we have him batting 7th again? Yeah,
He's batting
batting
7th.
So he's down in the order a little bit, but what can you do? They've got 6 lefties in the top 7 too. So outside of Locane batting 3rd, you've got 6 of your top 7 hitters are left-handed. It is an interesting stack, but it will cost you. Moustakas, Yelich, as you mentioned, should probably see ownership taken away just based on a $6K price point. A couple of these guys, though, Shaw and Gamble, make it a little bit easier. All right, let's talk about the Cubs and the Colorado Rockies. Alex, you had wind blowing out yesterday. Or was it blowing in? I don't remember. I know it's blowing in today.
It was out yesterday.
Blowing out, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had it blowing in around 11, 12 miles per hour. So Marquez has been good this year, better away from home, unsurprisingly. And I expect to see his strikeout numbers start to improve a little bit because you're still talking about a guy that gets a lot of swinging strikes, has a 20+% whiff rate on his curve and his slider. He misses a ton of bats with both of those pitches. But I think we should first start with you, Darvish, because Darvish has had issues with walks this season. But you're facing a Rockies team away from Coors that has notoriously struggled. This season is no different. A lot of strikeouts. WRC Plus is bottom 5 in the league. And Darvish is super cheap again, despite having like the 5th or 6th highest K rate on this slate. Walks have been an issue, but the Rockies really haven't done much in terms of walk rate outside of Coors, where they've seemed to produce everything this year. What is your take on pitching here? Because I think both are really interesting spots now that the conditions are favorable to pitchers at Wrigley, Alex.
Yeah, I think we got a good pitcher spot here with Darvish and Marquez, and Darvish in particular is going to be super popular. He's a very good value on all 3 sites with just being priced below average as far as salary, and this is a guy who strikes out 27% of batters, so it's well above average. In addition, Colorado strikes out about 5 to 10% more than average with their current lineup. So I think you can expect some big strikeout numbers here. Darvish doesn't go super deep, but the weather conditions are very favorable. So I think it's a green light for him. The only question is the ownership. Marquez has a bit higher price on FanDuel. He is probably the best price of the 3 sites. So at 9K, he has a lot of talent for that price point, and the weather again is good. So he's a good alternative to a guy like Sale, or some of the other high price guys like Morton.
I liked Marquez a lot more on FanDuel when Carrasco was slated to start, because I thought you would have seen a lot of that ownership go there. What's your take on the pitching matchup here, Adam? 2 pretty intriguing spots, depending on what site you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm expecting to get to a lot of Darvish on really any site, but especially on DraftKings at 7,100. He's affordable on Yahoo as well, where you need the 2 pitchers. You mentioned the walk rate for him is high. He's gotten it under control a little bit, still walking more than you would like. But the Rockies also against right-handed pitching this year, their active roster has the 19th highest walk percentage. So that plays into Darvish's favor. They've been below average offensively. Pretty middle of the road strikeout percentage. I think it's a good spot for Darvish, who, like you said, has the 5th highest strikeout percentage on the slate, and really is just underpriced. As far as Marquez goes, I think that he's more appealing on Yahoo and FanDuel, because on DraftKings he's only $300 less than Sale, but on those other sites you get a bigger discount. One thing to point out is that he does have much worse strikeout numbers against lefties than righties, and you do have 4 lefties in the lineup for Chicago, 3 in the top 5, and overall Chicago's not a team that strikes out a ton, so it's not the best strikeout matchup for him. But he is a good pitcher, and if you're going to get some ownership pulled away by other pitchers, where he's cheaper on FanDuel and Yahoo, I certainly have interest.
Yeah, it's FanDuel where I would have the most interest in someone like Herman Marquez, and the run total for the Cubs is still below 4, I believe. So.
Yep.
Low totals expected here. Do you guys, either wants to go here, any interest in hitters in this game? I'm not really getting to anything on either side.
I'm not getting a lot. I think that
Maybe Schwarber, but
yeah, I'll say individually Schwarber leading off and David Dahl against a very popular Darvish who does give up home runs would be like the two most appealing spots to me.
Okay, Alex.
I throw out some love for Cargo just because he's 2,700 on DraftKings, and it's pretty hard to find a guy under 3K that's just not total garbage, and Cargo is about average, so don't hate it.
That's true. Man, Josh Naylor for the San Diego Padres is super fat. Have you seen him run in the outfield?
I have not seen him play the outfield. I have seen him physically.
Wow, it's remarkable.
You had complete side note. Have you watched DJ Stewart? Like, do you know what he looks like?
No, I don't.
Okay, so he's like a bowling. He kind of looks like he's like a smaller Vogelbach, but he steals bases.
Does he?
Yeah, it's insane. Like he's actually kind of fast.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm looking at just a headshot because he's only played like 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, he played a little bit last year too.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever watched. I admittedly don't watch a lot of Orioles.
What's wrong with you, man? They're so much fun to watch.
I know. Oh yeah, you're an Orioles guy.
Yeah, and Tyree's moved to Baltimore just to be closer to that team.
Oh yeah, of course, Camden Yards. Speaking of, our next game on the list is Baltimore and Texas. But I want to let you know first that if you wanted to get 50% off your first month at awesemo.com, we have an easy way to do it. Just use the promo code Deeper Dive. One word, Deeper Dive, name of the show. When you check out, you'll get the ownership projections that we reference on every show. Awesemo's top stack tool that we talk about on every show. The player projections. The Fantasy Cruncher add-on is available. Lineup Builder. All of the articles that we put a ton of time into. DFS. I mean, honestly, we have content for every sport, whether it's NASCAR, PGA, basketball, baseball, football, WNBA, of course, NFL, MMA, you name it. Some betting stuff. We got it all. You want 50% off. Highly suggest you come join us at awesemo.com. See what it's like behind the curtain. Get 50% off by using the promo code Deeper Dive. One word, Deeper Dive, and say what's up in the premium Slack chat. When you do, it's where everyone's hanging out throughout the day. All right. Baltimore, what's up?
Yo, Lafia, I gotta give you some love here, and I know you're doing all the hard work, so let me help you out. If we could all I only have one thumb, so I need a lot more to put thumbs up on this video. So if you guys all can take a second to do that, much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. What are you saying, to like the video?
That's what I would like. Yes.
Okay, I got you. I don't worry, man. I do it at the end of the show. We can do it twice. Did you say you only have one thumb?
Yeah, well, one thumb on the website. Like, unfortunately, they don't allow you to use both of your thumbs on YouTube.
Okay.
But I did email them to complain about that.
Good. We'll wait to hear back. All right. Baltimore and Texas. Alex, you have the Orioles with John Means on the mound and Mike Minor for Texas. I'll be honest with you. I was really surprised. I've been surprised to see the amount of ownership that Texas pitchers have been getting, or really anyone against these lefties against Baltimore. Like Drew Smiley was getting projected for a lot of ownership yesterday. Mike Minor's down to 9% now. We had him higher earlier in the day. Like, I'm not saying you have to pay up for Baltimore bats, but they really haven't been that bad against lefties, and you have a decent amount of power from the right side of the plate here.
Yeah, it's crazy like that. I mean, this is basically like Coors Field as far as batting goes, and it's a little different situation because Smiley was a bargain bin pitcher, but Minor is top dollar on DraftKings and probably top 75% on FanDuel and Yahoo. So that's definitely a knock against him. That's a good park for batting, and that's represented pretty well in that 4.4 team total for Baltimore, who is a well below average team. So I think that he's got good numbers on the year, and it's a good matchup, but I don't see myself picking him over some of the other guys like Morton, Sale, Darvish, Marquez, etc.
Adam, what are your thoughts on John Means against a Texas team that has struggled pretty mightily against lefties this year? No Joey Gallo strikeouts, but what are your thoughts here?
Man, give him to me on DraftKings. He's too expensive on Yahoo and FanDuel, but
I wrote him up in the deep dive today, and I was worried that people wouldn't read it again.
Yeah, me and Josh had a pretty long exchange about John Means this morning. So only 3 lefties in the lineup for Texas is frustrating because Means has struck out almost 30% of lefties this year. He's struck out like 18% of righties. But going forward, I think that you see an uptick in strikeouts for him just because his changeup is really, really good. And so I would expect that you get at least, some sort of an uptick in strikeouts against righties. But on top of that, it's a right-handed heavy lineup. Delano DeShields isn't good. Logan Forsythe isn't good. Asdrubal Cabrera is not good from the right side. Jeff Mathis is worse at hitting than most pitchers. So if he can get past like Andrus and Pence from the right side, and you have decent guys in Chu and Mazzara from the left side, it's really not that scary of a lineup, even though it is right-handed. But more than anything, it's just the price point and ownership. I mean, people, if they're looking in this price range, assuming weather cooperates in the Pittsburgh game, people are going to go to Musgrove facing Atlanta. Like, it's not a good strikeout spot. It's a team that hits really well. Musgrove is better than Means, but I don't think that it's a huge difference. Like, I have Musgrove projected for like 1 point more than John Means, and I think his ownership probably is the ownership difference is probably much bigger than that justifies.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's not enjoyable, but at the same time, like, this is a team, active roster too, even without Joey Gallo, that has, a top 10 K rate, a bottom 5 WRC plus against lefties this year. They have not been very good. So it's obviously a huge risk, but John Means does have better, put it this way, better strikeout stuff and a better changeup, like a better out pitch than most pitchers that you would get at that price point. That's how I'll put it.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 guys in this lineup that since 2017 have a strikeout percentage below 22% against lefties, and that's Andrus, who is okay, not a ton of power, but he's okay. Asdrubal Cabrera, who has a 112 ISO against lefties over that time, and Hunter Pence, who is basically Christian Yelich. So it's just
right-handed Christian Yelich.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's still strikeout upside here, and he's cheap enough where if he does give up a home run or 2, as long as they're not like 3-run shots, you're fine.
Right, and I will point out, Alex, we'll get your take on this now. I will point out that like Andrus on Yahoo is $11. He is really cheap, and he is batting for stuff. 36 on FanDuel is fine. I'm not paying a premium for him on DraftKings, but it doesn't mean I'm not willing to look at Texas hitters here. It's just I don't think they're locked in. Where are you going as far as this matchup between Means and the Rangers bats goes?
I think the one guy I'm going to be looking at is Delano DeShields. He's not cheap on DraftKings, but he's 2,400 on FanDuel and 9 on Yahoo. So pretty much the minimum, batting second for a team with a 5.4 run total. And he steals a lot of bases. So I think that's a pretty nice price. And then as a stack, I kind of like it as a maybe under the radar spot because they're not getting a ton of ownership. And if I was stacking, maybe I would leave off the Shields on FanDuel or Yahoo because he's getting huge ownership, where the rest of the stack is significantly more contrarian. So I think this is a spot where you can be a little bit creative and get edge on the field.
Anyone interested in the world's best power hitter, Pedro Severino?
I mean, anytime you get a catcher batting in the middle of the lineup in Texas, it's okay.
It's really not that bad, actually. Coming off that 3 home run game is the only unfortunate part. It'll probably get some ownership towards him. But Adam, quickly, any Baltimore bats you want to talk about?
Mancini in particular is too cheap. I have a ton of respect for Mike Minor, and I don't expect to get to a lot of Baltimore here. If I had to pick between the 2, I would go to Minor. But Mancini's price tag is like he should never be cheaper than Renato Nunez. I know Nunez has power, but Mancini's just a better hitter.
I agree. All right, we'll stick with you. Boston, Kansas City. Chris Sale, Jake Junis. I don't want to. We got about 10 minutes. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I think some of it's self-explanatory. But for anyone that has been living in a cave throughout the day, just explain the Chris Sale situation.
He's really, really good at pitching. He went through a rough spot at the beginning of the season where he was getting no swings and misses on his fastball. I think he was hurt or working on stuff. We've seen him do that during seasons before too. I'm perfectly willing to kind of just toss aside his first 4 starts this year because we have such a long track record of him being really good. And since then, he struck out 41% of hitters. He's walked like 6%. He's facing a Kansas City team that is decent, but it's not a great lineup by any stretch. On Yahoo and FanDuel, at least you have to make some kind of a decision in paying all the way up for sale over these other pitchers we've talked about. On DraftKings, they just drop the ball in his pricing. I have no reason to get away from Sale. I can be contrarian with one of the 24 offenses on this slate. I don't need to do it by fading Chris Sale on DraftKings.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's ridiculous. Alex, thoughts on? Do I even need to ask about Sale? If not, well, I'd like to talk about the hitters here.
Oh, well, one knock against them is Kansas City isn't a great matchup for strikeouts, but all the other factors are huge. So
Yeah.
not worth really spending a lot of time on.
No, I don't think so. What about hitters?
I think you gotta go to Boston, of course. Probably not going to stack the lowest team total on the slate unless you're projecting another situation like last night. So,
Yep.
I think that Boston, they're a pretty good contrarian stack that has a lot of potential. Not great values on FanDuel and Yahoo. On DraftKings, I'm seeing some above average values, particularly Mookie Betts leading off for 4,800. That's too low for someone who has great power and great stolen base upside.
Martinez 4,800 as well, I think. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're really not in that bad of a spot at all. And Adam, for his career, Junis is allowing 1.6 home runs per 9 to righties. So when he starts giving up home runs, they come in bunches. It's just, stacking them as a whole can be expensive. Do you have any quick thoughts on the Boston bats?
They're one of my higher owned stacks. JD and Mookie on DraftKings right now are my two highest owned outfielders. But Rafael Devers has been hitting really, really well lately. They're just in a good spot against a pitcher that gives up a lot of home runs, and the weather is conducive for hitting in Kansas City.
All right. Alex, Cincy and St. Louis, you have a guy in DeSclafani who has been pretty good against righties, terrible against lefties. I mean, just downright atrocious against lefties. And then Dakota Hudson, who better against righties, bad against lefties too. The lefties that you're getting for the Cardinals, Carpenter, Fowler, Wong, Wieters batting 7th. Most of their best batters are righties, though. And then on the other side, I think maybe the most egregious price on the slate is Derek Dietrich on FanDuel, but I'll let you talk about this game.
So the first thing I gotta mention is the weather. There's some pretty severe storms in the area. The most likely outcome is it's not going to have a huge impact on the game because it's not going to be in the area of the ballpark too long, but there is a potential for it to just be a worst case scenario where the game ends up being rained out. So I'm going to be monitoring this game, and follow me at Awesemo Weather for updates up until the game locks. But I think that not really focused on pitching in this game. I'm more interested in the bats. Dakota Hudson, only 16% strikeouts on the year. So that's not really great fantasy value. DeSclafani, 23%, so that's pretty decent. But the knock against him is that St. Louis has a 5.3 team total, so that's just it's pretty high, and it's not really projecting a lot of success there.
Adam?
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of Cardinal stacks in my initial crunch just because they are affordable. I have respect for DeSclafani, especially against righties, but I still don't think he's a lights-out pitcher or anything like that. And you just have so much power on the Cardinals with the Young, Goldschmidt, Ozuna, Carpenter, and then you get the lefties with Fowler, Wong, Wieters, who aren't great, but they're lefties. So I think the Cardinals are a pretty decent stack here.
And one thing I do think is relevant is when you're looking at guys like it might be good, decent enough pitchers, but make for good stacks against them. Guys like Bundy, where when they give up home runs, it's just a lot of them. DeSclafani's allowed multiple home runs in 4 starts already this season. He's allowed 3 home runs in 2 of his last 3. So it's not like he doesn't give up power. He absolutely does. I just wish you had a couple more lefties here. But just throwing it out there one more time, Derek Dietrich on on FanDuel's 3K. The guy's got 17 home runs this season. He's hit for a ton of power.
Yeah, I think he's made legitimate improvements too.
Yeah, oh yeah, no question. Anything else on this one?
Not for me.
All right, and I think again Carpenter is a one-off, even if you're not stacking at the leadoff spot there. All right, Adam, 2 games to go. Oakland and the LA Angels. Felix Pena is your long reliever here. Bedrosian is your opener, and then Daniel Mangden, the ballerino, is pitching for Oakland, and he is not really that good. So, well, do you first of all, do you have any interest in pitching here?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you have interest in hitting? Because Oakland is still wildly cheap on DraftKings. I have respect for Pena, but I do think against lefties, there's still some vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I respect Pena too, especially against righties. And that's mostly what the Oakland lineup is, but they just have so much power at cheap price tags. From an upside standpoint, Chris Davis should never be below 4K on DraftKings. He still is there. Piscotty's really cheap. Matt Olson, I love at a cheap price tag. You just get so much power with Oakland in a park that is much better than their home park for hitters. So I'm getting to Oakland as one of my higher owned stacks because of the pitching and one-offs that it lets me get. On the other side, Trout and Ohtani, especially Ohtani, who is still really, really cheap for no reason other than his 100 at bat sample size this season. Those 2 guys I think are good, but beyond that, I don't have a lot of interest in the Angels.
That's pretty much everybody that I would have mentioned. Preferably Ohtani and Olsen are my 2 favorite bats, one from each side. Alex, what about you? If you're not going to pitching, let's talk hitting here.
Yeah, I think Ohtani is a sick value on DraftKings and FanDuel. A little bit more reasonably priced on Yahoo. And Oakland is going to be pretty popular today because of their value. So I might not favor them compared to some other stacks because they do have a little bit less potential than other stacks, and they're highly owned.
All right. One more game to go. By the way, sponsor of the Deeper Dive, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. If you haven't checked them out yet, we'll drop the link into the YouTube chat. Do so and use the code AWESEMO. Get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, which you can then use on the site as currency to play. The $10 10K guarantee is still open right now. 2K to first. 12% management fee, lower than any other site you're going to get unless it's like a startup where you can't really win anything. And you also have that $3 that they've been running with a 0% management fee, none at all. Keep an eye out for that. You can't put 150 entries in, 10 entry max, so you're not going up against anyone crunching 150 lineups each and every day. So put you on a level playing field for sure. Check it out. Use the code AWESEMO. Use our link in the chat. Get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points when you deposit. It's our sponsor, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, and we appreciate them. All right, Alex, Houston, Seattle, Brad Peacock, Mike Leake, final game. Go ahead, sir.
So I think this is one where Mike Leake is definitely a below average pitcher, not much fantasy value. Brad Peacock has good strikeouts, doesn't go deep in games, but the price tag is higher relative to some other pitchers. The strikeout matchup's good for him though. But I do like the Houston bats. On DraftKings and Yahoo, they're very good values. On FanDuel, they're a little bit more appropriately priced, except some really good values at the bottom of the order. So I think they might be a good contrarian stack on all 3 sites. And then Seattle, they have a 4.2 team total, so I'm not really interested in the bats.
Okay. Adam, game in total, what's your thought?
Mostly interested in Houston here. Their lineup's still not out yet, which tends to keep ownership down as well. Leake has always been a pitcher that doesn't miss bats, and this year he is just getting lit up. Alex Bregman, I like a lot as a one-off, but Derek Fisher gives you a little bit of power and some stolen base upside. Brantley's a good hitter. Chirinos gives you power. There's still, even though it's a watered-down lineup because of injuries, there's still cheap guys and some power upside and speed here.
That it?
Yep.
All right, look at that. 6 on the dot. Punctual here on the Deeper Dive. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in as always. Before you head out, hit us with a thumbs up if you appreciate the content. You want to see more of it because it helps us out a lot. and we appreciate you for doing so. Also, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you always know when new content's dropping next. Before we go, a couple top stacks here from each of the fellas. What do you got, Alex?
So I like Houston as a contrarian stack.
Okay.
And Boston as a chalky stack that I think might not be high enough owned.
All right, Adam.
Boston, St. Louis.
Yeah, I like St. Louis quite a bit here, and Milwaukee if you can fit them. Maybe they'll bounce back from the 0-run disgusting output yesterday. Stick around. We've got Live Before Lock coming up next. They're going to take you up to 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Lock. Alex Baker's done for the weekend. Adam and I will be back here with you tomorrow and Friday on the Deeper Dive. Good luck tonight. Catch you back here tomorrow.